water submerged unidentified submerged objects sighted above a cruise ship or deep sea fishing crew even. Yeah, I mean, I take reports all over the world. The maps that I have on there are zoomed in the United States, but that's the nice thing about Google Maps. You can zoom out and get reports all over the world. So I try to post those, and I don't specifically recollect any recent reports over ships, but I do occasionally get those. I've also had some military reports from ships. Next question. Do you look into any cases forwarded from Australia? Well, yes, if I get them. There's been a lot of good reports from Australia. I haven't had too many, but I occasionally get them, and any report I get, I will post it and analyze it to the time permitting. And if you missed it the last hour, towards the bottom of the hour, I discussed a case from Thailand. There's photos that I got. So yes, we look at cases anywhere we get them. Of course, I get the bulk of the cases I get are from the United States, but we do get some from Europe and South America or South Africa sometimes, and Argentina. So again, if you have any questions, you can go to our chat room at exceptionradionetwork.com. And if you'd like to make a call, that phone number again, toll free, 888-919-2355. Need to report a UFO sighting, www.ufosnw.com or epicvoyagers.com. You got a ghost story to share? Seen a Bigfoot in your backyard or anything? Feel free to chime in and let us know. And looks like we're getting some more questions coming in here. Let me discuss another sighting in the meantime. I'm never really claimed to be an artist, but I did try to replicate a report I got. This came from Eatonville, Washington, which is in western Washington State. It's south of Seattle, north of Mount Rainier. And this woman was out walking her dog. She's self-employed, and she goes out for long walks at night, and it's kind of a rural area. And one night, all of a sudden, her dogs just kind of stopped and looked straight up, and she heard this strange sound. And she was actually listening to music on her headphones, and the sound was over the top of her headphones. And they saw an object fly over the top of them that's shaped like an air filter. And the light was permeating from the inside of this air filter type object. And she regularly sees aircraft flying to the northwest of her, which is McCord, two military bases, McCord Air Force Base and Fort Lewis, which is a Army base, also home to some special forces. But anyhow, she's quite familiar with military aircraft, and this was kind of a weird situation because apparently she has a large, several acres of property. She kind of walks in the perimeter of her property, and she thought this was interesting enough to call her father, who's in Texas, and she thought she called her dad at 9:30, but in fact, the next day her dad said it was 11:30, and 1:30 his time because he lives in Texas. So she's wondering where that time went. So she was pretty freaked out by the incident. I've talked to her a couple of times, but this object was huge, way bigger than the full moon that held at arm's length. It would be more like a bread plate held at arm's length, as far as the actual apparent size. So that's a very interesting case. You can see my rough sketch that I did with Photoshop on my home page. So, okay, another question. how does the weather affect the atmospheric layers that we look through when star watching? Do they alter the appearance of what is normally out there like stars, planets? The answer to that is yes, and that's a really good question. And one thing that, and I'm a meteorologist, so I can speak to that with some credibility. It has more of an effect, particularly when the celestial object that you're looking at is lower on the horizon. And the lower it is on the horizon, the more atmosphere it has to shine through. And the photons from the object will scatter more, and this can really result in some unusual looking phenomena. That's why you can look, although I don't encourage you to, you can almost look at the sun as it's setting. And if there's a lot of atmospheric pollution, it'll look kind of like an orange ball, and a lot of it will be attenuated. And I had a report once in Washington State that was Venus, that I attributed to Venus, but it was very large because it was low on the horizon in the early morning hours, and it was there was some ground fog, and so that kind of made it look a lot bigger. So definitely that's a good question, and I don't know whether I responded to completely to what the caller meant, but it definitely can have a lot of effects. And of course, there's a lot of other effects, mirages and things, and you get reflections of lights in the desert, and when you get what you call inversion layers in the atmosphere, and really what that is you get quite a change in density in the atmosphere. The low levels are warmer, and then you get to the cold layer, kind of like a lens effect, and that can cause bouncing of radio waves or photons or even visible photons, and you can actually see cities or other objects a long ways away. And also it can have effects on radio TV. I remember growing up in the 1950s when we just had TV antennas, and up in northern Montana one day we were able to watch a TV station in Phoenix, Arizona, watch a baseball game, and it was due to atmospheric scattering and some special, really unusual effects. So anyhow, very good question, and it does have an effect. It also has an effect on radar, and radar waves can propagate, and you can see some really strange things on radar with temperature inversions and atmospheric layers. Again, if you have questions, we're not getting any calls tonight. All the chat room, which is InceptionRadio.com. I'm sorry, InceptionRadioNetwork.com. Toll-free number 888-919-2355. This is William Puckett. I'm the Director of Investigations for E.P.I.C, which is Extraordinary Phenomena Investigation Council. We're a group that investigates paranormal phenomena, and that encompasses UFOs, ghosts, poltergeists, Bigfoot, chupacabras, or even the Loch Ness Monster. Any of these type of cryptozoological beasts that are apparently out there that people do see from time to time. I haven't had a lot of those reports, but I have had some Bigfoot reports over the years, and people a lot of times will report a real foul odor near Bigfoot, and that's really a mysterious phenomena, and I really don't know what it is. Sometimes I think they're creatures from another dimension, because we just never find the bones. And, why not? You think if, they're mortal creatures, they're going to eventually die. And, even if they bury their bones, you think we'd find them. And and chupacabra, that's another weird thing. Happens in Puerto Rico, Mexico, even in the southern U.S. And some of those cases are quite bizarre and unexplainable. So again, if you have any of your own experiences with that, feel free to share them. Ghostly encounters. Haven't investigated many of those here since I've been with E.P.I.C, but have had a few reports here locally, but I haven't done any investigation. And Dr. Marcel related that his kids had some experiences in an older home that was built in the 1880s here in Helena. Helena is a pretty old town. It's an old mining town, I believe, started around 1865. The local newspaper here goes all the way back to 1867, so certainly a lot of history. Another question, have these Bigfoot cases been tied to UFO sightings, and how do you approach that report? Well, that's been speculated that, Bigfoot sightings have been, there's been UFO sightings. The two have never been really correlated. They could very well be both from, higher dimensional extra-dimensional phenomena. I believe a lot of UFO reports are parallel universe, higher dimensional phenomena. And maybe Bigfoot is too, because we never find the carcasses. Another thing too, earlier I discussed cattle mutilations. And the thing about cattle mutilation, I live here in Montana, and if ranchers start losing cows, they're going to be out there with their guns. They're not going to take that laying down. That's their bread and butter. And there's never been an arrest made for a cattle mutilation in the 40-plus years that we know they've been occurring. That strikes me as being quite unusual. Another question about Bigfoot. About the Bigfoot bones, perhaps they go somewhere to die like elephants, or they bury their own. Well, that's possible. They do seem much more advanced, hard to catch than an ape. Well, that's possible. I can't say that. I can't disagree with that statement. That could very well be the case, but you'd think sooner or later we'd find one. And those sightings occur all over the world, although they seem to be concentrated in remote forests. I lived in Washington State for 31 years, and out on the West Coast and the Northwest, in the forested areas, very remote areas, a lot of Bigfoot sightings. I'll also add that some of the best UFO reports that I've had have been in remote areas. A couple of years ago, I was still living in Washington State. Gentleman, Joe Ryan, Dr. Joe Ryan, who helps me from time to time, we had a report from a ex-Forest Service employee west of Olympia, Washington, it's called the Black Hills, not the Black Hills of South Dakota, the Black Hills of Washington. This gentleman, he's a PhD in forestry, and he had a heart bypass operation, and so he drove out there one morning and was out for a walk on a logging road, and all of a sudden, bingo, a big dish-shaped object. This was in the morning hours. The sun was shining, hovering right over this logging road, and it just shot straight up. He was only a few feet from it. Just surprised him. He came around a corner, and he heard something drop off it, hit a tree, and he heard it kind of bounce down. He heard some rustling. He went out to look. He couldn't find anything, and the object had no visible windows. There were no markings on it, no U.S. Air Force, no weird symbols, and so he went home and kind of wrote down some notes about it. This happened around the year 2000, but anyhow, Joe Ryan and myself, we went up there, and he drove us out to the area, remember, right where it happened, and I took some videos and photos and radiation readings and didn't find anything unusual, but that was in a very remote area. So, okay, another question coming in here. I think, where's it at? Another one with Bigfoot? I guess not. I thought we had another question. Anyhow, if you have any questions, feel free to go to our chat room, Reception Radio Network. Question, have you followed up on this case? I'm not sure what case the caller is talking about. Now, if they're talking about Bigfoot cases, or are they talking about the case that I just described on the UFO and the force? Well, I did. Yeah, I mean, the gentleman reported the case to me, and I went out and looked, and, we didn't find anything, so there's not really much more I can do. I looked at the area. I took videos. I took photographs. I took readings with my Geiger counter. I took electromagnetic readings, and we didn't see anything unusual. But remember, this was almost 10 years before, and you're in an area where it rains 60, 70 inches a year. Any debris is going to be long gone. We did kind of look around to see, if there was any other artifacts around, but I did recall that we did see some trees that looked like they were broken off where this object had ascended, and he said it hit the trees when it went up. So, no, I didn't do any more follow-up on that. Not much more I can do. Question also related to that sign. Did he report any missing time? No, he did not. And I did specifically pose that question to him, but he didn't report any missing time. Actually, I don't have it in front of me, but I did a computer sketch kind of on top of the sketch that he made and overlaid it to where this thing was hovering. And if you go to my website and www.ufosnw.com and then go to UFO sightings, go to archive cases, and go to Washington State, and that case happened around 2000. You can read about that case. Okay, got some question on cattle mutilations. Are cattle mutilations happening in the same states, same ranches, or same operations on each cow? Is there anyone researching or marking hotspots? Well, there have been people that have done that. Linda Moulton Howe has... she's the one that kind of broke open the cattle mutilation scenario when she's an environmental reporter for a TV station in Denver. I know that there's been a lot of cases in cattle producing states like here in Montana, New Mexico. There's been a lot of cattle mutilations in the San Luis Valley, a high mountain valley mining area in southern Colorado. A lot of cattle mutilations there. So, but as far as specifically tracking, I track cases, but I don't get a whole lot of cattle mutilations. But if they come in, they're logged in as a report, and I geographically track them. Another question coming in. What is your favorite UFO report of all time? Or favorite report from your site? Real good question. Well, this photograph, the best photograph that I ever got was from Redondo Beach, California. I believe it was taken March 31st, 2007. The gentleman was out for a morning walk. I think this happened 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. Sun was up. And he sees this object, dish-shaped object, flying at jet speed, stops and hovers. He pulls out his camera, shoots a photo of it, and then it just streaked away to the southeast. And the photo, we've analyzed the photo. It was the original photo taken. Some people down in Redondo Beach tried to replicate it as a hoax and doing various things. And that particular case, in my mind, has defied explanation. I personally believe, based on observation, photographic evidence, that it was a real deal, what I call classic 1947 flying saucer, just like Jesse Marcel the last hour was talking about. So that's my favorite photo. Another case that has always intrigued me, excuse me, my voice is kind of wearing thin here, happened in along the Mississippi River. I don't remember the town, but it was south of St. Louis, Missouri. On the Missouri side, well, also on the Missouri River splits Illinois and Missouri. I'm sorry, the Mississippi River. And I got this call from this guy one night, and I believe it was on a Saturday night I got the call. It's my recollection. His dogs were going wild, and he lived right close to the river, and he saw these green lights over the river, so he walked over there, and then he called some of his friends on the Illinois side. I'm trying to paraphrase this. I may not be getting everything accurate, but I'll try to what I recall about it. And they came over from on the other side of the river, and this object, huge green light, was just hovering. So he called the sheriff. Sheriff and some of his deputies responded. And when he called me, he had 2 cell phones in his hand. He was talking to the sheriff on one cell phone and me on the other. And the sheriff, they didn't know what it was, so they just left. So these guys, they get in their jet boats, and they go after this thing, and they start shooting at it. And when they shoot at it, their boats just shut down. The engine shut down, both boats. And the object just disappeared. He calls me back after and I don't recommend anybody shoot at these things. First off, you don't know what it is. Second off, it could be, you could hurt somebody. I mean, maybe it's explainable. So don't get out your guns and start shooting. But anyhow, he calls me, and I could hear the water sloshing when he called me. He's pushing his boat onto an island out there on the Mississippi River. So that's another really strange case and one that sticks out. So, well, we're getting close to the end of the broadcast. Here's another question. Have you personally been contacted by any government agency or contractors that may be working with the government about any one of your cases that you posted? No, I haven't. Other UFO researchers have. I have not. I've been contacted by groups like Robert Bigelow's group, Bigelow Aerospace, who investigate UFO reports. I've given them reports. I've been contacted by media, but never specifically any government agency. Not yet. And definitely would take that seriously. And but that's a very good question. Some other UFO researchers have. As of yet, I have not. And I do know that when I was, from time to time, I monitor URLs of people that visit my site. I do see a lot of .mil and .gov extensions, which are government military entities that are visiting my site, but I have no way of knowing whether those are just employees the government on where at work or what, so I really don't know. I got time for about one more question, and then we're going to close the show. Be sure to visit, download the podcast. If you missed part of the broadcast, you can hear Dr. Marcel's interview, and visit my website, www.ufosnw.com, Epic Voyagers site, www.epicvoyagers.com, and we're airing this broadcast from the InceptionRadioNetwork.com. You can download the podcast. I'll also put the podcast on my site. So thanks for being with us tonight, and visit us next week. Tune in next Monday night for the weekly Epic Voyagers radio broadcast. And with that, I'll say we got one more question, and I'll take that. When working as a meteorologist, were you ever asked to explain UFO sightings that anchors talked about on their news? No, I never was. We jokingly had a code in weather phenomena for UFOs, but I never ever coded one. So, but good question. But no, I was never asked to working as a professional meteorologist to explain any UFO sightings. So with that, we'll close. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to tune in next week. And from the cold valleys of the capital city of Helena, Montana, this is William Puckett saying good night.
Thank you for being with us tonight. Please join us again next Monday evening for Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council's Epic Voyages. I'm Roger Peacock for Epic. Until next time.